us.
No.
Okay, you ready to go live?
Shall we begin?
Yes. Yes, you're ready to go live. Hi, Thomas. That's us live. Welcome to everybody who's joining us. We're good to go.
Shall we begin?
Yes, please. We're good to go.
Shall we begin?
Yes, please. We're ready to go.
1 minute. Okay. What do you want to do?
Thomas, we're ready to go. Please begin.
Okay. A very good evening to the bishops, major superiors, education directors and secretaries, the principals, and the teachers present for this webinar. A very good morning to the team in Finland. A hearty welcome to one and all. I am happy to inform you that 10,747 principals and teachers have registered for this session. It is a wonderful response. As we have a team from Finland to take the session, let us have a glimpse of Finland. Finland is the land of Santa Claus, a land of forest with plenty of berries and mushrooms. There are 40 national parks. It is every man's right to venture into any park as long as you respect the nature and clean after yourself. Finland is a land of contrast. In the summer months, the sun does not set at all in the northmost part of the country. Hence, Finland is nicknamed as the land of midnight sun. In the winter, the sun disappears for months. This time is called Kamos. This year, for the 8th time, Finland topped the world's happiness report ranked by happiness level based on factors such as freedom, honesty, welfare, good health, and generosity. From this land of happiness, we have a generous team with us. Mrs. Ulla Maria, the CEO and founder of ThingLink, Ms. Louise Jones, Director, Education, Community and Partnership, Mr. Alexei, Partnership and Sales Director of ThingLink, Mr. Henry, a teacher trainer and a curriculum specialist. They are based in Finland. Mr. Parimal, based in Pune, is the country head, India and Asia of ThingLink. This team will be taking the session today from Finland. A hearty welcome to you. This webinar has been organized to make a comparative study of the education system in Finland and NEP 2020. This 1 hour session is only an introduction to study the education system of both the countries. Finland education system is the best in the world. There are several similarities and differences between India and Finland education system. NEP 2020 is mostly based on the Finnish education model. It is the fact that taking into consideration with the existing school infrastructure, the ratio of students in each class, and various other factors, it is neither easy to implement NEP 2020 nor adapt to the Finnish education system as it is. There are several factors how Finnish education has come up to be the best in the world. This team have made a thorough study of NEP 2020. I am sure that the participants also have made a study of 65-page document of NEP. During this 1-hour session, the team from Finland will try to analyze and suggest possibilities to adapt their education system in Indian context. NEP will come into a reality from 2023. It is the result of very deep research for many years and taking into consideration the changing world scenario. India will have highest youth population in the world over the next decade. And our responsibility to provide high quality education opportunities to them will shape the future of our country. The world is undefining rapid changes in the knowledge landscape. In future, skilled laborers is becoming rapidly increasing demand. NEP is aiming at the growing world demand as India is moving towards becoming a developed country and among 3 largest economy in the world. Considering the need of the hour, it is time to replace the rote learning to learn how to learn through reducing the content and more towards activity-based skill development. NEP has made learning a pleasure than pain. School is said to be the temple of learning. The question is, are the children very eager to come to this temple, to be heavily loaded with assignments, which makes even the parents lose their sleep during the homework? In such a scenario, children come to school with a heavy load on their back and drag themselves to schools as if they are being dragged into a slaughterhouse. NEP curriculum has been framed and gives a pedagogy to make education more experimental, holistic, integrated, discovery-oriented, learner-centered, discussion-based, flexible, and joyful. The teachers are the center for implementing NEP. They have the greatest responsibility to make the change in the education scenario to make India into a global knowledge superpower. To implement the NEP, CBSE has started a massive training program for 42 lakh elementary school teachers. More than 18 lakh have been already trained. I wonder how many of the teachers present here have access to this training program. Today's session is only an introduction to a way forward. Later on, ANAX will be organizing training programs to prepare the teachers to implement NEP, which will come to effect from 2023-24 academic session onwards. ANAX has already organized several seminars and workshops to prepare the principals to implement NEP. As I conclude and hand over the session to the team from Finland, I would like to make a few announcements. At the end of the session, you will be able to ask questions and clarifications. You can also place your questions, comments, and suggestions in the chat box. Your valuable suggestions will help us to organize suitable program for the teachers and the principals. If you like to have a copy of the recording of this session, please send a mail to Anak's office. A humble request to you all. At the end, if you have liked this session, please tell others. If not, tell us. We will improve upon. Once again, on behalf of Anak's Executive Committee, Father Maria Ashok Kumar, the President, the Varghese KJ and Father Jimmy James, the Vice Presidents, Sister Flavia was and Sister Tersila Pinto, members, Father Maria Charles, CBCI representative, and myself, Brother Thomas Thanikal, the General Secretary. Anax, extend a hearty welcome to you all for a very fruitful session. Thank you very much. Now let us turn our eyes and ears over to Finland.
Welcome also from my part to the Finland Meets India with All India Association of Catholic Schools webinar. We are very thankful to Father Thomas for this opportunity to connect and discuss the similarities and shared goals of the national education policy and program in India and the Finnish education system. And I just wanted to say here in the beginning a couple of words before we start this webinar, since we're talking about technology, which is many times a controversial topic of discussion. The way we see it at ThingLink is that technology is always a reflection of what kind of world we believe in. And it materializes the key assumptions and beliefs about how we learn, who has the right to learn, and how can technology support our learning. ThingLink is a Finnish education technology company with a global mission to help fight inequalities in education and help guarantee quality education not only for students, but even more importantly for teachers. We have founded the company on the belief that visual digital media plays a central role in the future of learning and making education accessible, especially in situations when the physical infrastructure is not there, it's not reliable, or it's not safe. And the school in the cloud, as the Indian educational thinker Sugata Mitra already introduced in 2014, or virtual school, will be a necessary part of the future education system. But it's really important that digital and physical infrastructure is seen as complementary and not competing. And together they can make schools more flexible and accessible. All we need, as he says, is broadband collaboration and encouragement. Especially this year at ThingLink, we have seen that digital learning environments that are made of our own images and our own videos of the places we live and work in does not mean that we would have fewer personal connections or less meaning, even if these are digital representations. On the contrary, as we have been seeing and we will be seeing later on today, it can make more meaningful connections possible on both global and local level in a more cost-efficient way. I just would like to thank very much Father Thomas for this opportunity, and also our team, Parimal and Alexi. We have been building good relationships with partners in India for 3 years now, and going forward, we see ThingLink as a company that has 3 foundational pillars. One is in Finland, one is in United States, and one is in India. Again, we are happy and look forward to follow this webinar and discuss with you, and we look forward to future collaborations afterwards. Thank you again, and I will now hand it back over to Aleksi and Parimal.
Could you just unmute your microphone?
Thank you very much, Brother Thomas and Ulla. It is my great privilege to meet all of you at today's ThingLink Catholic Association Schools webinar. Before starting, I must thank to Brother Thomas, who has taken this initiative with ThingLink for giving such a wonderful opportunity to meet all fathers, sisters, brothers, and finally the respected bishops across country. Today, you all will get to know how NEP 2020 India is similar to Finnish education system. My expert EdTech colleague will brief you in details. I am also very delighted to inform you that with ThingLink platform, you all will get an opportunity to implement NEP 2020 along with Finnish education systems and teaching methods with your existing infrastructure. You all also will be learning how technology and Finnish teaching methods will help to learn experiential immersive learning based on students' textbook those students are learning in India. And they should be able to learn devices like desktop, laptop, tablet, smartphone, and wherever they are. I would also like to share that even parents will be happy to engage themselves with their children during their digital learning practices on ThingLink platform. Today, I would like to share many more things, but right now I would like to hand over my mic to Alexi and to share about the best ThingLink education systems to all of you.
Thank you,
Good luck.
Parimal, and thank you, Brother Thomas, making this webinar possible. I'm so happy to be here today. I just checked our YouTube live. There's already over 3,000 people watching this live, and my name is Aleksi Komu. I'm from our ThingLink Finland team, and today I will give you a 5-minute introduction what is ThingLink, and it works as a wrap up to our warm up to our main speaker Henry, who will continue after my presentation. This video what you see on the screen, I used to work in that school for 5 years, so I have a teacher background also, and it's amazing journey to combine pedagogy and technology and meet all the people and teachers and students all around the world. A little bit about today's agenda. My presentation is about ThingLink, but then Henry will talk more about how Finnish education system links to the India's new national education policy. And then he will give a concrete example how to get away from rote learning and towards competence-based education with formative assessment. Ulla gave already a brief introduction. What is ThingLink? We are a Finnish educational company. We are a technology company, and we do also curriculum development and teacher training in different countries. We have about 6 million teachers and students using ThingLink for creating accessibility and visual learning experiences. I wanted to have this short quote from UNESCO because they are telling very important things about us, and I bolded the most important parts what we are doing and what is our mission. It is to help to foster learning experiences for all. So we want that there's a possibility to learn and educate yourself for everyone and not depending where you live and what's your backgrounds. And we also help to build curriculum to develop the 21st century skills and competencies. And we also want to support different kind of learners, and we want that everyone has the possibility to learn. Like Ulla told, we are founded in Finland 2010, in US 2013, and next year in India. We have about in total 8 million users and 350 millions learns with ThingLink every year, and we have users, teachers, and students in 190 different countries. The main point of ThingLink is that it is a very easy tool to create content by using your text or typing using voice, typing text, using photos or videos. And it works with any device. It works greatly with any mobile phone. And all the content works in offline. And next year we are bringing offline content creation too. That video inside that mobile phone, I just before the webinar I went outside. So here in Finland there's a little bit snow, but not that much yet. So that's a very fresh video from where I live. ThingLink makes possible to learn in the real world environments. And of course you can go outside of the classroom or outside of the school or go outside from your home. But we want to give students access to real-world environments and situations that would otherwise be out of their reach. So if they want to visit some museums, or if they want to visit Finland and learn more about Finland, or if they want to visit a real chemistry lab, that is possible through ThingLink. One very important thing with our tool is accessibility. We have built-in tool that translates all the text-based content to over 80 different languages. There's Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, Bengali, Kannadi already supported, and many more to come. What we are doing right now, we want to give education for all, and we are starting from teacher training. So we are collaborating with different Finnish schools and universities and teacher trainer experts to create a new way to learn online. Because during the COVID-19 time, on-site trainings are getting harder and harder, or if you want to visit different countries, that's not possible right now. So we are trying to give some lessons what we have learned from Finland, and for India we are linking everything to national education policy. We share so many things together, our Finnish educational system and your new upcoming national education policy. Some examples are equity, development as a human being and a citizen, transversal competencies, integration of the studies, multidisciplinary and lifelong learning, continuous assessment, learning for understanding. You will get this presentation afterwards, so you can see all the examples what I had there. But now our main star, Henri Pennanen, will tell more about Finnish educational system and how it links to NEP, and he will also give you a concrete example of formative assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexi. Thank you for introduction. And I'm honored to be here with all your fellow educator here today. And I'm so happy to see that there are so many of you participating. So today I'm going to talk a little about the Finnish education system and its similarities to India's newest national education policy, and what kind of challenges there might be in implementing the policy, and what kind of approaches we can take to solve those challenges. So, and at the second part of the presentation, I will give you an example how we can use continuous assessment, actually to be more precise, formative assessment in solving some of those challenges. So, but now I'm just going to share my screen, and we will start on the Finnish education system. Okay, and I hope you can all see me now and see my screen. Well, here are some qualities of the Finnish education system, and if you're participating with your mobile phone, you can easily find this picture, this flowchart. Just type in a Finnish education system in Google, and you can find this if it's not visible for you now. But it all starts with the early childhood education that is voluntary. And students start preschool at the age of 6, and then they go to the compulsory basic education at the age of 7. After that, it takes 9 years, and they can then choose will they go to general upper secondary or vocational qualification studies. And after that, it's moving to universities or universities of applied sciences. So it's a kind of a similar system than any other. What makes it kind of different is that it's really flexible. So, for example, if you study general upper secondary school, you can switch at any time to vocational education. And same goes to universities and universities of applied sciences. So you can switch between the studies if you feel that this field of education is not for you. So it's really flexible, and there are no dead ends. Most of the education is publicly funded, and there are not many private schools. And the few ones that we have, they follow the same curriculum and also get the public funding. One feature is that there's no standardized testing. Actually, the first national examination is matriculation exam at the end of upper secondary education. Also, annual instruction time is very low for us. At first grade, 20 hours a week, and ninth grade, about 30 lesson hours a week. It varies a little bit, but instruction time is pretty low. One of the basic principles that we have in Finnish education is that all people must have equal access to high quality education and training. So education is free at all levels, from pre-primary to higher education, to universities. Also, that's the same thing that the new national education policy is aiming for: more equity and more inclusion. The potential of each pupil should be maximized, of course, and we should try that. So we see educational guidance as really essential part. So we have specially educated guidance counselors in every school, but this counseling is seen as the work for all education personnel. Our special education is provided primarily in mainstream education. So we have this kind of 3-level support system: basic support, intensified support, and special support for learning troubles, and also multi-professional student welfare system for dealing with the social problems. Also, one feature is that the students in higher education from upper secondary education on are allowed to have study grants. So that's about 22,000 rupees a month, and about 18,000 rupees of housing allowance. And this is the kind of the support that they don't have to pay back. Also, for higher education, there are affordable loans for students that they have to pay back after they graduate. The system relies really on trust and responsibility, which is its unique feature in a way. Our school inspections were ended already in the early 1990s, so we don't have school inspections, and we don't have this kind of traditional teacher evaluation system. All the quality control and steering, it happens through giving information, supporting, funding, legislation, national curriculums, which are really important part of the steering, and of course research. So local education providers, they have really much educational freedom how to arrange education, and they are responsible for arranging that. So municipalities and cities are the ones who are arranging the education usually. We do have some national evaluation of the learning outcomes, but it's really kind of a sample-based, so not all the schools participate. So it's just only few schools every year. But the main thing is the self-evaluation of the schools and education providers, and this is done with the municipalities and schools throughout the school year. So there are regular questionnaires and researches of many kinds and many kinds of topics, and they come from the National Agency of Education and then Ministry of Education and other national authorities, and they are used only for steering purposes. So any result they get, they don't release it in public. So it really relies on trust, and teachers are trusted by the principals, by the parents, administration, and also the students. So that brings us to our next important feature of Finnish education, which is the teachers. Every teachers have to have a master degree for teaching. So they go to the university, it's a 5-year program, and after that they get the kind of a license to teach. So unique is that we have the first 6 years of basic education, we have class teacher system. And class teachers are usually these generalists, so they teach almost every subject. And the same student usually stay with the class teacher for many years. And of course, in pedagogical point of view, the class teacher system is absolutely great for supporting the learning and arranging learning and integrated model, for example, flexibly. But the system is pretty much the same than anywhere else from the 7th grade on, and we have subject specialists from 7th grade on. But all teachers have high educational freedom, so they can decide their working methods, they can decide their assessment methods, which books they use, which equipment they use, or will they even use books, study books? If not, that's also possible. The teacher have the freedom to do that. Of course, they are negotiating with the principal on these matters, but basically they can decide how they teach. And it's quite motivating for the teachers, even though if you compare the teacher salaries with the same education for other fields, in Finland, the teachers have only a bit above average salaries. Okay, what about the learning then? Well, it all starts from the conception of the learning, which actually affects in many things. So the Finnish view on education is based on social constructivism. So in short, it means that new knowledge is built in interaction with the others and with the world. So the students are really active participants in learning, and they develop their learning to learn skills and working skills throughout their school year. And in practice, this basically means that we are using as versatile working methods and assessment methods as we can, versatile learning environments, formative assessments, which I'm going to speak up in a moment, and collaborative learning whenever it is possible and reasonable to arrange. if we look at the curriculums, there's one really important concept, and that is transversal competencies. And this is also same for NEP, for the new NEP, the competency-based education. So these transversal competencies are formed from kind of multidisciplinary knowledge, skills, values, attitudes, will, and their objective is to develop students as a human being and as a citizen. And this example is from the basic education, but the same idea goes from pre-primary to upper secondary education. And these transversal competencies are built within subjects. So they are inside the subject's content areas and all the learning objectives. So they are kind of automatically there when teachers are following the curriculum and teaching. And these transversal competencies are also assessed. They're not that much evaluated, but they are assessed, and especially through formative assessment. Well, if we want to develop transversal of competencies, we come to integration of the studies. So this is required if we want to build cross-subject and multidisciplinary learning. And I sometimes stumble into misconception that there are no subjects in Finland and Finnish schools, only integrated learning, but that is not true. So most of the education is subject-based, but integration of the studies is used whenever it is reasonable and possible to arrange. And this is actually used more on the grades 1 to 6, where there are class teachers, and little less on the grades 7 to 9, for example, in basic education, but it's used in weekly based. So basically it means that we use in multidisciplinary learning, we can use different kind of approaches like phenomenon-based learning or problem-based learning, project-based learning, experiential learning, which is really also much visible in NEP. And all together competency-based thinking in arranging the learning. And of course, it's all kind of aims for learning for understanding. So we want learning to be meaningful for the students. So we try to avoid rote learning and try to make it meaningful through these actions and through these teams. Okay, what's in common then? There are so many things that is in common with national education policy and Finnish education. And I picked here some of these, and these are not randomly picked, but these themes come up in the national education policy quite often. Equity, inclusion, development as a citizen, human being, competency-based education, integration, experiential learning, individual approaches to learning, which now with the new NEP should be found. Use of technology was one big thing there also, and continuous assessment, the tracking of the individual learning. So these are really much the same, and I think we share the same values and humanistic ethos, the Finnish national education culture and national education policy. So that's really actually strikingly similar. Well, what about the challenges then? Well, basically they are almost the same, and most of these challenges is something that we also face and still face, even though we have a different kind of socio-economic structure and our nation is a more homogenic. But still, there are the same challenges also, which we had to tackle when we did our curriculum reform a few years ago. And I think now these are ahead of you too. So how can we turn social inequality to equity and inclusion and rote learning to competency-based education? How can we abandon kind of subject silos, which we traditional have, take in more integration? How can we abandon kind of too much lecturing, taking more versatile working methods, do integrative instruction and experiential learning, meaningful learning, and all those things. Also, what Brother Thomas said at the beginning, how to make the learning more holistic. There's a problem, I know, with you especially have a problem with big groups. So how the earth we can find individual approaches to learning if we have so much students? Also, lack of technology. How can we use technology if we don't have technology, or the technology is limited? And evaluation and testing also. One big aim is to move away from rote learning, and that means that evaluation and testing must change somehow, and it's changing also. And we must focus on assessment of learning processes, and how can we do that? Well, the solutions are, of course, there are solutions. I'm happy to say that there are solutions. They are not easy ones. In some cases, we have to think about in a long run, and there's no single solution for everything. But like systemic change and politics and funding and infrastructure, that is something that we don't have power upon that much. But when you think about it, the real change happens in the school, and what we can affect too is learning. We can affect how we teach, how we structure our teaching, how we cooperate as a teacher teams, for example. We can find new approaches to learning. For integration, we need more, like PBL, we need more versatile methods and learning approaches to solve these challenges. And of course, it requires in-service training. Teachers, we as teachers, we need new skills. But after that, after we acquire those skills, I think they are free to use. Those things doesn't require a lot of money. So the way you're teaching doesn't always require money. It's about teaching methods and assessment methods and things that are basically free. So in that way, we can change learning culture from inside out. We can make it more cooperative and collaborative, activating and student orientating. And actually, the biggest thing, how it will change, one of the most important thing is the changing the assessment culture. So if you think about it, how we assess and evaluate affects directly on how we teach. Because if we are only studying for tests, it tends to lead to rote learning. It tends to lead to lecturing. But if we are concentrating on the learning process and assessing the learning process, it turns our working methods to be more versatile, and we automatically start to teach in a more versatile way. And for this, I want to give you a concrete example now, how, for example, concentrating changing the assessment of the learning and concentrating on formative assessment can change really a lot. So I'm going to now switch between the presentation. Just bear with me for a moment. Okay, here we go. It's going back a little bit. So we already look at the challenges of NEP. So I know that there is many more, but these seem to pop up constantly in new NEP. But when we look at the formative assessment, it is usually misunderstood as being only a verbal or written feedback at the end of the learning period. But it's not actually the case. The feedback is only a part of formative assessment. Formative assessment actually refers to the concept of acquiring assessment information that you use to guide and modify learning processes. So it's not about evaluating the students. It's about revealing the learning processes and guiding students and modifying learning processes. And how we acquire that, then that assessment information which we used with formative assessment? Well, we use this OAD, observing, asking good quality questions like why, how, when, directing, strategic questioning, and discussing. And these discussions happens between the students in groups, also of course between the teacher and the students. So when we look at the then formative assessment, the feature of the formative assessment, it's never numeric. So if you give a grade on something, that if you only give a verbal feedback or written feedback at the end of the learning period, that is not formative assessment. That is summative assessment, because summative assessment is executed at the end of the learning process. Formative assessment is always done during the learning. So in that way, it differs from summative assessment. And like said, it concentrates on the learning processes, opening up learning processes. So you don't directly use the assessment information that you get from formative assessment. You don't use it for evaluating the students. So all the formative assessment information you get, it doesn't even need to be documented. Only the most crucial part of it that affects on learning should be documented. It's really closely connected to pedagogy. You will see that formative assessment methods are really close to normal working methods. And now if we go to the methodology part. So first of all, we have some basic methods that we used with formative assessment. And these are observations, self-assessment, peer assessment, and assessment discussions. And especially self-assessment and assessment discussions are emphasized in formative assessment. And self-assessment is really, it can be really simple like thumbs up or writing some sort of questions or a little essay or stuff like that, or just talking with your peers and talking with the teacher and talking with the other students. So our assessment discussions, they are long or short discussions between the students and between the teacher and the students. So we have to remember that it's not that formal. So it's more like informal a way of teaching. So formative assessment is a way of teaching and getting these methods as a part of your teaching, the way of teaching. So of course there are many ways to implement these and many ways to do observation and self-assessment. But there are always at the background, there are pedagogical frame in how you use formative assessment. So I don't have time now to go into the details, but what you can get from this picture is that you always think about the 4 phases of formative assessment when you are planning and implementing your formative assessment. You always have to recognize the gap. So the gap is what is the students' objectives to do, what they can do now, the difference between that. Then you set objectives and clarify the criteria, and also students have to be part of it. Then advancing learning is just basically teaching, giving suitable assignments, splitting objectives into smaller parts, combining those formative assessment methods to your teaching. And feedback, sorry, my mouse is a little. Feedback is the third phase. So feedback should be also feed forward. So we don't only concentrate on the task that we did, but we have to concentrate on the future tasks. So that way we give constructive feedback that is realistic but supportive. And finally, through versatile working methods and assessment methods, we try to activate the students. So these 4 things are at the background all the time when you plan. But then you can look at the formative assessment also. If you take a 1 lesson or learning period, you have some methods that you use at the beginning of the lesson, some that you can use in the middle, and some that you use at the end of the lesson. And that's how you form a whole of formative assessment. And now we go into the concrete level. So, for example, at the beginning of the lesson, you could use something that is called, for example, yes and no chart. So basically, you introduce the topic or content area. You ask students to list what they understand on the left side of the paper and what they don't understand on the right side of the paper. And then you have a group discussion, or you discuss as a teacher with the whole group, or the student discuss with together. And then they decide what is important, that matters, really matters, that they understand. And that way, as a teacher, you acquire that assessment information, how to modify and steer your teaching. And on the other hand, you make your students to self-reflect on their learning and concentrate on their learning process. Then in the middle of the lesson, you could try something that is called do's and don'ts. And this is really simple and fast, also a working method and assessment method. So students list 3 do's and 3 don'ts when they're using or applying knowledge or relating to the content. For example, in this picture, the teachers is using 3 do's and don'ts when solving fractions. So she asks students to list 3 things that they should do when they are solving fractions, and list 3 things that they should not do when solving fractions. Again, it's a working method, but again, it's about self-reflection, acquiring knowledge, how to steer your teaching, making students to self-reflect. And again, you combine discussion and an interactive way of teaching to this method. And then at the end of the lesson, you could try, for example, minute papers. They are really easy and quick to use. So you just ask students, for example, to list questions that were not answers during the lesson. So again, quickly you acquire information how you should steer and modify your teaching, and you make students to self-reflect. And again, you have a discussion with the students. So now if you there's a lot of discussion, and then discussion can happen between the students in groups, or between the teacher and the students. And at the beginning, if the students are not really used to doing group work, it takes a little bit time to select the suitable group working methods. And these skills, these methods, you need to teach them to your students. So it takes a little bit time, but it's really possible in remote learning setting, in the classroom, and also with big groups, if you just select right kind of methods that are suitable for bigger groups. Again, so what makes those formative assessment methods then different from working methods? Well, here are some features of formative assessment methods. They usually include self-reflection, self-assessment. They are used for steering the learning. Both student and the teacher is using them. They are student orientating. They activate the student. There's discussion and collaboration, group working elements. They include questioning and meaning making. But what is the most important thing? That they are purposely and repeatedly used to embrace these features and these points. So there's a pedagogical frame, and you purposely use and plan your formative assessment. You attach that to your most important learning objectives. And that is they are not used randomly. Okay, let's get back quickly to the national education policy and how formative assessment connects to that. So there's a demand of transforming the culture of assessment, demand of continuous tracking of learning outcomes of each child. And of course, learning outcomes are tracked by summative testing. And summative testing and formative assessments, they don't compete with each other, and both are needed. But if we try to go towards competency-based education, integration of the subjects, and if we want to abandon the silos and this too much of subject-specific learning, then we need some tools to assess the process of learning. And formative assessment is a great way to actually assess the learning. Again, it's not evaluating the learning, it is about opening up the learning process. And formative assessment information works pretty well also in supporting the summative testing. So they are not competing with each other. Moving away from rote learning. So this is exactly what the formative assessment does when you use it correctly and in planned way. So it moves the focus from testing and practicing for tests to the learning process. So you automatically, when you take in these formative assessment methods, you automatically start to teach in a different way, more activating way. You start to concentrate on the learning process. So what are the benefits then of formative assessment? Well, here are some of them. Of course, they develop students working and learning to learn skill. In a way, they make students more self-regulated over a time. It doesn't happen over a night, but it happens over a time. And it automatically improves the quality and versatility of your teaching. If you learn how to use the formative assessment methods and you select the right ones for you and for your group, your teaching will improve. I'm really sure about it. They activate and motivate the students. They move the focus away from rote learning, and it means basically less lecturing and more activating and student-oriented working methods. Promote collaboration, cooperation skills that are needed in modern working life. And also, they support assessment of integrated and competency-based learning, individual learning and social equality in a way, because formative assessment is individual, because it takes into account the individual need. So there are two functions of formative assessment. The teacher uses it to modify and differentiate the teaching and acquiring information what should be retaught. The student uses it to see where they are now on their learning process, where they need to go and how will they get there. So the whole learning process becomes easier to follow and steer and support. And over a time, it means better teaching and better learning. Okay, now you might ask that, how can you use that with larger groups? Well, first of all, selecting suitable methods. Some formative assessment methods doesn't suit to be used in larger group, but there are dozens of methods that you can learn from our course or by just looking some sources from the internet. And there are dozens of methods, and there are many that suit for use with larger groups. So when you select those methods, try to emphasize this discussion and self-assessment part, self-reflection part, maybe peer assessment also. And of course, you have to take account the age of the student. So with the younger student, these have to be quite simple ones, these methods. And with the older one, they can be more complicated. Then you add features of formative assessment to your regular working methods. So the features I said, formative assessment really are working methods. They just have specific features. So you can modify your own learning and teaching methods and add in these features. So this is not something that you put on the top of your regular work, but you modify and maybe even replace some of the methods you use. And that way, it doesn't increase your workload as a teacher that much. Maybe in the beginning a little, but when it becomes automatic, it just actually takes the load off. You don't have to lecture that much. Your students become much more self-regulated and they develop the skills, learning skills. That it becomes easier to actually teach. Then you can emphasize these 4 phases, of course, these theoretical background, and keep that in mind when planning. But of course, using group work and cooperative learning, and there are courses you can take also in group working and cooperative learning methods. Cooperative learning especially is good one because it makes the students to take responsibility of their own learning, and every student has to take part of those. There are certain kind of methods, but keeping it simple. You as a school, you can decide like 4 or 5 formative assessment methods that you take in as a school, and all the teachers start to use them. That's why it's much more easier to teach those methods to the students, because formative assessment methods are something that need to be taught to the students. Also, then you get a much more peer support from your colleagues when you're using same kind of working methods. Of course, according to the subject's specific skills that are needed. Also, you must take that into account. But it's not rocket science, really. It's just selecting the right methods. So back to the challenges. I bolded out something here that formative assessment can help you with. So when used in the right way, it will bring the individual learning processes visible for students, and it becomes easier to teach, and it improves the self-assessment skills of the students. It will help assessing integrated and multidisciplinary learning, the learning processes, and will bring new activating working methods automatically to your teaching. Also, I think it will make learning more equal and helps in inclusion, because it is individual by nature. Summative testing is the same for everybody, but students are different. They learn different. And summative testing can only measure cognitive processes that can be turned into a measurable format. But formative assessment brings the learning process into the center of the learning. And formative assessment gives more chances through different kind of working methods and assessment methods for students to show what they know, and it will make them more active and more motivated when they understand why they are learning, what they are learning, where they need to go. It will give more tools to assess and arrange competency-based education, transversal competencies, like said, multidisciplinary learning. And this continuous assessment, which is in NEP, it is actually formative assessment. Formative assessment, it is continuous assessment. So the NEP demands the tracking of the learning outcomes of each child. So you use summative testing, but also when you use formative assessment to support it, I think you get the best results. So of course, formative assessment is one approach to learning, but we in Finland have seen that it's really a great tool to improve the learning process and the teaching. And I thank you for my part, and I hope you got some new ideas from that. It was a quick presentation, but I'm sure that you got the idea of it.
Thank you so much, Henry. I was reading the chat while you gave the presentation. People really liked it, and they told it, hundreds of them told it's very informative, and all the tips you gave, they were very concrete and nice. We didn't get any questions, so this time we don't have questions and answers part, but those who had problems to see the whole presentation, this YouTube link will work after this webinar, so you can watch it again. And if you put your phone on the horizontal mode and put the YouTube video full screen, then you can see all the charts and all the parts of Henry's presentation. So I thank you, everyone. And if Brother Thomas, do you want to come and say everyone the final words?
I think there are not many questions, because Henry has done a wonderful job explaining from all aspects, and it is not easy to ask a question all of a sudden. It is a very complex situation. And the presentation was so wonderful. And I am sure that there will be many more participants for our next program in the future.
Yes. So thanks from ThingLink's part. It was amazing to be part of this webinar. Thanks to you, Brother Thomas and Inax. And we will continue working together and make education possible for everyone. So good night and thank you, everyone.
Good night. Thank you very much. We'll meet again sometime later.
Yes.